What do you get when you mix parts of an unrealized Beverly Hills Cop script,
Stakeout? No. I'm picnicking. This is like a picnic area.
romantic thriller novel A Running Duck, and a leading man named Marion?
You want to talk? We'll talk. I'm a sucker for good conversation.
Well, naturally, a film with a body count of over 50. A film where the original cut was so violent and so brutal that it had to be edited to avoid an X rating by the MPAA, all starring Sylvester Stallone at the height of his popularity, cutting pizza with scissors in his apartment unreasonably close to outrageously large neon Pepsi signs, and murdering the bejesus out of some really bad dudes. Today, not knowing what happened to Cobra is the disease, and we're the cure, as we get into what happened to Cobra.
Did you use unnecessary deadly force?
I used everything I had.
We're not trying to make you fall for the old banana in the tailpipe when we tell you that Stallone was originally supposed to star in Beverly Hills Cop.
You're not gonna fall for the banana in the tailpipe?
The Italian stallion full of hubris had been cast as the lovable prankster Axel Foley, later made iconic by Eddie Murphy.
You just got your badges and your guns and you're on the job, right? Make sure we get the right drinks, because if I drink club soda, I'll throw up.
Stallone, though, decided to rewrite the script to his liking, resulting in the studio balking at the elaborate action sequences and inflated budget. Stallone would instead pair these ideas with the themes from the aforementioned 1979 romance novel, A Running Duck by Paula Gosling, an unexpected inspiration that was so inspirational that it ended with Gosling being given a writer's credit on the film, though he would later lament not directing the film himself, saying, "Cobra to me was half-baked. I could have done better, but I wasn't concentrating enough. I felt as though that's something I should have directed, and I didn't, and I regret that." Stallone came into Cobra fresh off of Rocky IV and Rambo First Blood Part 2. He had found himself regrettably engulfed in political conversation due to the violence in his films and their impact on the cultural fabric of America. Not only had Soviet leaders held an entire press conference complaining about the content in Rambo 2, but he was facing heat at home as well, as the media continuously misrepresented his work. Stallone complained, "I find it incredible every time some local atrocity happens where a man puts on fatigue pants and takes a rifle and goes into a shopping center. It's Rambo Murderer Slays 3. Rambo doesn't kill innocents." One wonders if that sort of thinking inspired the opening to Cobra. In the scene, a supermarket killer attempts to go on a rampage before Police Lieutenant Marion shows up, swigs a beer, and blasts his ass. Beforehand, though, he specifies to the shooter,
Go ahead. I don't shot her.
followed by the classic line,
Good disease. And I'm the cure.
It's also worth mentioning that in Stallone's original script, this scene takes place in a movie theater and features far more innocent casualties before Cobra arrives. Stallone didn't like his character's thoughts to be divisive on these topics, saying, "The hardest part in doing a film like this is not to become too preachy with it. I let people kind of decide what they want from it." But he would also hint at his own thoughts, admitting, "I have a great deal of sympathy for people that have been victimized, and the perpetrator seems to just go free." Marion Cobretti, named after John Wayne's birth name, Marion Robert Morrison, and his junk food-loving partner Gonzalez, played by a lovable Rennie Santoni, are part of a zombie squad that handles the gnarliest of jobs that other cops just can't. The fellas end up tasked with protecting a supermodel, played by Stallone's wife at the time, and supermodel herself, Brigitte Nielsen, who unknowingly witnesses a murder. She then ends up being attacked nightly by the perpetrators, a killer dubbed the Night Stalker, and his cult, the New World. Which brings us to the shockingly potent horror aspect of Cobra, the villains. Sure, this flick is unmistakably a mid-80s one-liner dropping, kiss-stealing action extravaganza.
No hard feelings, pal.
Hell, there's even one of the weirdest montages you'll ever see when the needle drops on Rocky collaborator Robert Tepper's Angel of the City, all as Cobra combs the city tattoo parlors for criminals, and Brigitte Nielsen dances with robots. No, seriously. But make no mistake about it, Cobra is dealing with some of the most horrific bad guys in all of action lore, led by the physically imposing Night Slasher, played beautifully by Brian Thompson. Thompson had the looks of a wrestler who ate NFL players for breakfast. Built for the 80s silver screen of larger-than-life characters, he had began his career in 1984's The Terminator.
Wash day tomorrow. Nothing clean.
And he wasn't just physically imposing in Cobra. Between the character's demonic voice and weird shit they had him saying,
"On your eyes, pig!"
he's rather terrifying. You'd never guess that he almost missed out on the role, because Stallone and Cosmatos thought that he seemed too nice in early auditions. He and Cosmatos never did end up as fans of each other, with Cosmatos once telling the actor, "You could have been good if you had listened to me," citing the fact that Thompson had repeatedly tried to get advice on his character's backstory from an uninterested Stallone, who would just reply that the character was simply evil. Whether it's the wild camera zooms on Thompson's pantyhose-covered mouth as he delivers one of his lines,
Kill her.
or just the batshittery of it all, he was just unforgettable. A perfect villain for a movie like this, because it truly feels like the type of bad guy only a Stallone-type character could stop. And we haven't even gotten to the cult-like force of evil behind him. The film never gets very deep into the why of the New World criminal faction. These are just anarchy-loving nutjobs who are fueled by the blood of the innocent. The police and press both believe it's the work of a lone serial killer, brutally murdering random people.
Did he say why he did it? Is this related to the Night Slasher? The Night Slasher is an entirely different case. Now please, people, please.
But it's actually a large cult that includes at least 50 people, who we see Cobra mow down by the film's end. There's a cult of thorn-like presence to them. A previous script had Hellraiser's Andrew Robinson, a needle-nosed detective in the film, as the true leader of the New World. He's discovered when Cobra rips off his shirt during a scuffle to reveal a satanic tattoo. In the version we ended up getting, Cobra shows us plenty of the New World's murder spree set against the nighttime backdrop of California, where most of it was filmed. Multiple haunting sequences take place where we see the group overtake innocents in their cars, homes, and parking garages, murdering them with knives and axes. It's pretty scary stuff. The Night Slasher's main weapon, a knife with sharp brass knuckles, was designed by Herman Schneider, who says Stallone asked for a knife that audiences would never forget. If you pay attention to the trailer for the upcoming slasher Hard Eyes, you'll see a weapon that appears to be inspired by it. But with horror, murder, and knives come the MPAA, who marked Cobra with the dreaded X rating due to extreme violence. It's relatively easy to spot the moments where the camera cuts away from a sure-to-be brutal kill in a way that's reminiscent of more than a few Friday the 13th sequels. Then there's the third act, where Marion mows down a commando number of bad guys. Even then, there's a creepy aspect to it all, as pantyhose-clad bad guys drop from hotel skylights, or suicide propel themselves into hotel rooms via motorcycle.
Before we continue with our video, here's a reminder to click the Store tab on any of our JoBlo channels and browse our collection of the latest and freshest designs in our merch store. Go get you some.
Naturally, all of this ends in a one-on-one showdown in a fiery industrial plant, where men settle shit. It's also where we get some haunting dialogue from the Night Stalker,
"Let's bleed, pig!"
and is followed up by an only in the 80s one-liner.
This is where the law stops and I start. Sucker.
Ending with Cobra hanging the killer on a giant hook like we're in some sort of Terminator Leatherface crossover fever dream as the killer is sent to burn to death in the shooting flames. All this metal badassery was backed by a Sylvester Stallone soundtrack that, stop me if you've heard this before, fits both the action and horror genres of the 80s and 90s like a glove. Speaking of gloves, you might also notice the stylistic choices of our psychopaths and neon lighting choices during certain scenes that lend an almost Fulci or Argento vibe to the production. Cobra fan Nichols Winding Refn certainly took notice of the aesthetic. Even incorporated Ryan Gosling's toothpick as an homage to Cobra's match-chewing habit in his hit film Drive. Winding Refn or no, you won't be surprised to learn that Cobra didn't win any Critics' Choice Awards when released on Memorial Day weekend of 1986. Detective Monty's snobby review of Cobra's work may as well have been a Rotten Tomatoes consensus when he said, "You kind of overdid it here. I personally would have looked for more of a subtle solution, but that's not your style." But the box office responded the same way that Cobra had responded to Monty. Despite the critics' disdain, Cobra came at #1 at the box office on opening weekend and landed $160 million overall on a mere $25 million budget. Fair or not, the movie was still looked at by some as a failure for being unable to reach the heights of Stallone's previous blockbuster franchises. Stallone himself said of the film that he'd wished he'd gave more, saying, "That's one thing about making movies. Aside from watching your hairline recede, you go, God, why didn't I try harder?" He came close to having another go at the property in 2019 when he mentioned the possibility of making a Cobra television series with noted action director Robert Rodriguez. Sadly, for whatever reason, it hasn't been brought up since. There is still hope that the X-rated version of Cobra shows up somewhere. After all, Stallone famously recut and delivered his version of Rocky IV. Why not the same for Cobra? I know some horror fans would definitely like to check out that cut that allegedly includes a slew of more violence and gore, possibly up to 30 or 40 minutes worth. Scenes that include victims' body parts being sent to the LAPD, extended kill sequences, and shots of the New World members at their day jobs integrated among society, many of which were replaced with clips of the cult doing their weird axe-touching workout rituals in the theatrical cut. It wasn't just violence missing from the cut either. After the success of Top Gun at the theaters the week before, Stallone and company decided to heavily cut the film even further to ensure one more screening per day at movie theaters, equaling more box office. It appears there's an entire Snyder Cut situation possible with this neglected horror action masterpiece. We'll keep our axes touching and our fingers crossed. Cobra may not have been for everyone, but neither was Marion Cobretti, and neither are a lot of the most entertaining horror and action films of the 80s and 90s. And they just don't make them like that anymore. And that is what happened to Cobra.
I don't deal with psychos. I put them away.
Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, please make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. JoBlo remains an independent company, and we appreciate all of your support.